Jake Morrison walked through the crowded halls of Kepler Station. The air smelled of fuel, cooking food, and too many people in one place. His ship needed repairs, and he needed supplies. It was just another stop on another cargo run. The station was huge, built from old mining equipment and ships welded together over many years. People from dozens of worlds lived and worked here. Most were honest traders, but Jake knew that not everyone on Kepler Station made their money in legal ways. He had been walking for an hour when he heard the voice. It came from a dark hallway that led to the lower levels of the station. "Come, see the finest slaves in this sector, strong workers, smart servants, beautiful companions." Jake stopped. Slavery was illegal in most parts of the galaxy, but out here on the edge, laws were more like suggestions. He should have kept walking. He should have minded his own business. But something made him turn down that dark hallway. The auction was being held in an old cargo bay. About 50 people sat in metal chairs, watching as different beings were brought onto a small stage. Most of the buyers looked wealthy. They wore expensive clothes and had bodyguards standing behind them. On the stage stood a tall, thin alien with green skin and too many teeth. This was Zektar, the auctioneer. He was selling a large, muscled creature with 4 arms. "This Corallian can work for 20 hours without rest," Zektar shouted. "Perfect for mining operations or heavy construction. Do I hear 5,000? Credits?" Hands went up around the room. The bidding went fast. The Corallian was sold for 12,000 credits to a mining company. Representative Jake found a seat in the back and watched. He told himself he was just curious. He had heard about these auctions, but never seen one. Each slave was brought out, described like a piece of equipment, and sold to the highest bidder. A small, gray alien with large eyes was sold as a translator. Twin cat-like beings were bought by someone who wanted exotic dancers. A creature that looked like a walking plant was purchased for garden, work on a rich person's estate. Jake felt sick watching it all. These were thinking, feeling beings, not things to be bought and sold. But he stayed in his seat. What could one ship captain do against such a big operation? Then they brought out the last slave dot. She was small and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly in the dim light. She had 4 arms like the Corallian, but hers were delicate and graceful. Crystal-like growths ran along her spine, catching the light and throwing it back in beautiful patterns. Her hair was white as snow and hung down to her shoulders. It was her eyes that made Jake lean forward in his chair. They were large and silver, and they held more sadness than anyone should have to carry. She looked around the room with those eyes, not in fear, but with a quiet dignity that touched something deep in Jake's chest. "And here we have a Crystary," Zektar said, but his voice had changed. He sounded disgusted. "As you all know her, kind brings nothing but bad luck. Her previous owner died in a transport accident just days after buying her. The owner before that lost his entire business within a month." Murmurs ran through the crowd. Jake saw people making signs with their hands to ward off evil. Several buyers got up and left. "Still," Zektar continued, "she's young and healthy. She can work. Someone might find a use for her. Bidding starts at 100 credits. Silence filled the room. Jake looked around and saw fear and disgust on every face. The Crystary girl stood perfectly still on the stage, her silver eyes now looking at the floor. 100 credits, Zektar called again. Surely someone needs a servant, even a cursed one. More silence. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. 50 credits then. She eats very little and never complains. Still no one bid. The girl raised her head and looked directly at Jake. For a moment, it felt like she was looking right into his soul. He saw no plea for help in those eyes, no begging. just acceptance of whatever was going to happen to her. "This is ridiculous," Zektar said, his voice angry now. "I'm not going to feed her forever. If no one wants her, I'll have her put down. Save everyone the trouble." That's when Jake stood up. 50 credits, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the quiet room. Every head turned to look at him. He was just a human in simple clothes, not one of the wealthy buyers they were used to seeing. "Ah, finally," Zektar said, though he looked surprised. 50 credits from the human. "Do I hear 60? Jake looked around the room. Everyone was staring at him like he had lost his mind. No one else raised their hand. 50 credits once. 50 credits twice. Sold to the human. Jake walked to the front of the room, pulled 50 credit chips from his pocket, and handed them to Zektar. The alien smiled, showing all those sharp teeth. "Congratulations," Zektar said. "She's all yours. But don't come crying to me when your luck turns bad." Jake looked at the Crystary girl. She was watching him with those silver eyes, and he thought he saw a tiny spark of something that might have been hope. "What's your name?" he asked her. "Luna," she said quietly. Her voice was soft and musical. "Well, Luna," Jake said, "let's get out of here." As they walked toward the exit, Jake wondered what he had just done. He had a crew to think about, a business to run. What was he going to do with a slave, especially one that everyone said was cursed? But when he glanced at Luna walking beside him, her head held high despite the chains on her wrists, he knew he couldn't have done anything else. Sometimes a man had to do what was right, even when it didn't make sense. Outside the auction room, Jake stopped and looked at Luna. "I'm not your owner," he said. "I don't believe in owning people. We'll figure out what to do next, but you're not my property." Luna stared at him for a long moment. Then, for the first time since he had seen her, she almost smiled. "Thank you," she said. Jake led Luna through the busy corridors of Kepler Station toward his ship. People stared as they passed. Some pointed and whispered. Others quickly moved out of their way, making signs with their hands to protect themselves from bad luck. Luna walked quietly beside him, her chains making soft clinking sounds with each step. She kept her head down, but Jake could see her silver eyes watching everything around them. The Horizon's Edge sat in Docking Bay 12. It wasn't the biggest ship or the newest, but it was home. Jake had bought it 10 years ago with money saved from working on cargo ships. Now he and his crew ran supplies between the outer worlds and the core systems dot. As they walked up the loading ramp, Jake heard voices from inside the ship. His crew was playing cards in the common room, as they did most evenings when they were docked. "Jake, is that you?" called a woman's voice. "Yeah, it's me," Jake answered. He looked at Luna. "These are good people," he said quietly, "but they might need time to get used to you." They entered the common room. 4 people sat around a metal table covered with cards and credit chips. Jake's crew looked up as he walked in. Then their eyes moved to Luna. The card game stopped. Casey Brooks, his first officer, was the first to speak. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. She had been with Jake for 5 years and wasn't afraid to speak her mind. "Jake," she said slowly, "what is that?" "Her name is Luna," Jake said. "She's going to be staying with us for a while." Pete Collins, the ship's engineer, pushed back from the table. He was a big man with grease-stained hands and a kind face. But now he looked worried. "That's a Crystary," Pete said. "Do you know what you've done?" "They're cursed, Jake. Bad luck follows them everywhere." Amy Chun, the navigator, was staring at Luna with wide eyes. She was young and smart, the best pilot Jake had ever seen. But she was also from a world where old superstitions still held power. "My grandmother told me stories about their kind," Amy whispered. "They can read minds." They can make terrible things happen just by thinking about them. The fourth crew member was Dr. Ben Rodriguez, the ship's medic. He was older than the others, with gray hair and steady hands. He looked at Luna with professional interest. "She looks sick," Ben said. "When did she last eat?" "I don't know," Jake admitted. "I just bought her from a slave auction." The room went quiet. Casey stood up, her chair scraping against the metal floor. "You did what?" she said, her voice getting louder. "Jake, we're traders, not slave owners. What were you thinking?" "I wasn't thinking," Jake said. "I saw her there, and I couldn't just walk away." "So you bought her?" Pete asked. "With our money?" "With my money," Jake said firmly. "And I didn't buy her to own her. I bought her to free her." Luna had been standing silently during this conversation, but now she looked up at Jake. There was surprise in her silver eyes. "You don't understand," Casey said. "It's not just about the money. Crystari are dangerous. They bring disaster to everyone around them. Ships crash, equipment fails, people die." "That's just superstition," Jake said. "Is it?" Amy asked. "My cousin worked on a ship that took on a Crystari passenger. They hit an asteroid field, and half the crew died. The Crystari survived." "Coincidence," Jake said, but he didn't sound as sure as he wanted to. Ben stood up and walked over to Luna. She backed away from him, but he held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm a doctor," he said gently. "I just want to check if you're hurt." Luna looked at Jake. He nodded. Slowly, she held out one of her arms. Ben examined it carefully and looked at her other injuries. His face grew angry as he saw the marks of chains and rough treatment. "Whoever owned her before didn't feed her enough," Ben said. "She's malnourished, and these wounds need treatment. Can you help her?" Jake asked. Ben looked uncomfortable. "I took an oath to help anyone who needs medical care," he said. "But Jake, the crew is right to be worried. There are stories about the Crystari. Many stories." "Stories aren't facts," Jake said. "She's just a person who needs help." That night, Jake gave Luna a small storage room that he cleaned out and made into a bedroom. It wasn't much, but it had a bed and a door that locked from the inside. He brought her food and water, then left her alone. The crew met in the common room after Luna had gone to sleep. They talked in low voices, but Jake could tell they were upset. "This is a mistake," Casey said. "I've been your first officer for 5 years, Jake. Trust me on this." "What if she really is dangerous?" Amy asked. "What if something happens to the ship?" "Nothing is going to happen," Jake said. "She's just scared and hurt." "Then why won't she talk?" Pete asked. "She hasn't said more than 2 words since she got here." Jake didn't have an answer for that. Luna had been very quiet, and her silver eyes seemed to watch everything with a sadness that made his chest hurt. Over the next few days, strange things began to happen on the ship. The lights in the corridors would flicker for no reason. The ship's computer made weird noises and sometimes gave wrong information. The coffee maker broke. The shower in Jake's quarters stopped working. The crew started having bad dreams. Amy woke up screaming one night, saying she had dreamed about her homeworld burning. Pete couldn't sleep because he kept having nightmares about the ship's engines exploding. Casey came to Jake's quarters on the 3rd day. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. "It's her," Casey said. "All of this started when she came on board. The crew is scared, Jake. They want her gone." Jake had been having strange dreams too, but he didn't want to admit it. In his dreams, he saw a beautiful world covered in crystal cities. Then he saw fire and death and people screaming as their world died. "Maybe it's just stress," Jake said. "We've all been working hard." "Look at the ship's logs," Casey said. She handed him a datapad. Equipment failures are up 300% since she arrived. The computer has crashed 12 times. That's not stress, Jake. That's her. Jake looked at the numbers. They were bad, very bad. But he thought about Luna in her small room, barely eating, never speaking unless he asked her a direct question. Give me more time, Jake said. How much time? Casey asked. Until the ship falls apart? Until someone gets hurt? Just a few more days. Casey shook her head. The crew won't wait much longer. They're talking about leaving when we reach the next port. Good crew members are hard to find, Jake. Don't lose them over this. That evening, Jake brought Luna her dinner. She was sitting on her bed, staring at the wall. The crystal growths on. Her spine were glowing softly, something he had noticed they did when she was thinking. Luna, he said, I need to ask you something. She looked at him with those silver eyes. Are you causing the problems on the ship? The equipment failures? The bad dreams? Luna was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was so soft he could barely hear her. I don't mean to, she said. Sometimes when I'm scared or sad, things happen around me. I can't control it. Can you learn to control it? Maybe, she said, if I wasn't so tired all the time. The chains they put on me had drugs that made my mind fuzzy. I'm getting better, but it takes time. Jake sat down on the floor near her bed. Tell me about your people. What happened to them? Luna's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. We lived on a world called Krista. It was beautiful, covered in singing crystals that made music in the wind. We were peaceful. We used our gifts to heal and to help others see the future. What happened? War came, Luna said simply. Other races feared our abilities. They fought. We were too powerful, too dangerous. They destroyed our world and scattered my people across the galaxy. Most of us ended up as slaves. Jake felt anger burning in his chest. How long have you been a slave? Since I was a child. I'm 24 now. Jake stood up. Luna had spent most of her life in chains, and now his crew wanted him to abandon her because of their fears. I'm not going to let them make you leave, he said. Luna looked at him with surprise. Why do you care what happens to me? Jake thought about that question. Why did he care? He barely knew her. Because everyone deserves a chance to be free, he said finally. For the first time since he had met her, Luna smiled. It was small and sad, but it was real. Thank you, she said. Jake made a decision that changed everything. On the morning of their 4th day in space, he went to Luna's room with a key. She was sitting on her bed, staring at her hands. The chains on her wrists had left dark marks on her blue skin. Luna, Jake said, I want to take those off. She looked up at him, her silver eyes wide with surprise. You want to remove my chains? Yes, Jake said. No one should have to wear chains. Luna shook her head quickly. The others won't like it. They're already afraid of me. If I'm not chained, they'll be more scared. Let me worry about my crew, Jake said. He sat down beside her on the bed. Hold out your hands. Luna hesitated, then slowly extended her arms. The metal chains had rubbed her skin raw in some places. Jake felt angry seeing the damage they had. Done. He put the key in the first lock. It opened with a small click. Luna gasped as the heavy metal fell away from her wrist. Jake opened the second lock, and both chains dropped to the floor. Luna stared at her free hands like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. She rubbed her wrists gently, touching the sore spots where the metal had been. How does that feel? Jake asked. Strange, Luna said. I've worn chains for so long, I forgot what it was like without them. As soon as the chains were gone, something changed in Luna. The crystal growths on her spine began to glow brighter. Her silver eyes seemed to shine with inner light. She sat up straighter, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. But then something else happened. Luna's eyes suddenly went wide, and she grabbed Jake's arm. "I can hear them," she whispered. "Hear who?" "Your crew. Their thoughts. Their feelings." Luna closed her eyes tight. "They're so scared and angry. Casey thinks you've lost your mind. Pete is worried the ship will break down. Amy keeps thinking about her grandmother's stories. Ben wants to help me, but he's afraid too." Jake stared at her. "You can read their minds?" "Not exactly," Luna said. "It's more like feeling what they feel. When I wore the chains, the drugs blocked my abilities. Now that they're gone, ... She opened her eyes and looked at him. "I can feel everything." Suddenly, Luna grabbed her head and cried out in pain. The lights in the room began to flicker wildly. From somewhere in the ship, Jake heard alarms start to sound. "Luna, what's happening?" "Too much," she gasped. "Too many feelings. I can't control it." Jake took her hands in his. "Look at me, Luna. Focus on my voice." She opened her eyes and stared at him. For a moment, Jake felt something strange. It was like Luna was inside his mind, seeing his thoughts and memories. He saw himself as a child on Earth, working on his father's farm. He saw his first trip to space, his dream of having his own ship. He saw the moment in the slave market when he first looked into her eyes. "You really meant it," Luna said softly. "When you said you wanted to free me, you don't want to own me." "No," Jake said. "I don't want to own anyone." Luna took a deep breath, and the lights stopped flickering. The alarms went quiet. But Jake could hear running footsteps in the corridor outside. The door burst open. Casey, Pete, Amy, and Ben rushed in, all talking at once. "What happened? The ship's systems went crazy." Lights were flashing everywhere. The computer started speaking in a language I've never heard. Then they saw Luna without her chains. Casey pulled out her blaster. "Jake, get away from her," Casey shouted. "She's dangerous." "Put the gun down," Jake said calmly. "Look what she did to the ship," Pete said. "The engine readings are all wrong. We could have been killed." Luna stood up slowly. The crystals on her spine were still glowing, casting pretty patterns of light on the walls. When she spoke, her voice was different than before, stronger. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to scare you. When the chains came off, all my abilities came back at once. I couldn't control them." "Stay back," Amy said, moving behind Pete. "Don't come near us." "I won't hurt you," Luna said. "My people. Don't hurt others. We heal. We help." "Your people destroyed a merchant ship last year," Casey said, still pointing her gun at Luna. "Killed everyone on board." Luna shook her head. "That wasn't one of my people. Someone else did that and blamed us. It happens often. When something bad happens and no one knows why, they say a Christery did it." Jake stepped between Casey and Luna. "Put the gun away, Casey. She's controlling your mind." Casey said, "Can't you see that? You're not acting like yourself." "I'm not controlling anyone," Luna said. "I can feel what you feel, but I can't change your thoughts. That's not how my abilities work." Ben moved closer, his medical bag in his hand. "Can you prove that?" he asked. Luna looked at him. "You're thinking about your daughter on Mars. You haven't seen her in 2 years because you're afraid to go back to Earth space. You think the authorities might still be looking for you because of what happened on New Beijing." Ben's face went white. "How could you know that?" "I never told anyone." "I can feel your sadness when you think about her," Luna said gently. "You miss her very much." "That's impossible," Pete said. "Unless..." He looked at Luna with new fear. "Unless you're reading our minds." "Not reading," Luna said. "Feeling. When you're afraid, I feel afraid too. When you're sad, I feel sad. When you're angry, I feel angry. That's why the ship's systems were acting strange. Your emotions were mixing with mine, and I was sending them out without meaning to. Amy took a small step forward, so when we were having bad dreams, you were feeling my memories, Luna said. I dream about my world dying every night. When my abilities were blocked by the drugs, the dreams stayed in my head. But as the drugs wore off, they started reaching out to all of you. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Casey slowly lowered her gun. Can you control it now? Casey asked. I'm learning, Luna said. It's been so long since I could use my abilities freely. But I won't hurt any of you. I promise. Over the next few hours, Luna showed them what she could really do. She went to the engine room with Pete and touched the main power core. Immediately, the engine began running smoother than it had in months. How did you do that? Pete asked. I can feel the machines. Spirit, I guess you'd call it, Luna said. Like how I feel your emotions, but different. The engine was unhappy because 2 of the power connections weren't quite right. I helped it find balance. In the navigation room, Luna worked with Amy. She looked at the star charts and pointed to a route that would save them 2 days of travel time. There's a solar wind current here, Luna said, touching the display. If we ride it, we can go much faster. Amy checked her instruments. You're right. How did you know that? I can feel the movement of space around us, Luna said. It's like feeling the flow of water in a river. Even Ben was impressed when Luna helped him in the medical bay. She looked at his supplies and told him which medicines were getting old and which ones would work best for different types of injuries. My people were healers for thousands of years, Luna explained. The knowledge is part of who we are. By the end of the day, the crew looked at Luna very differently. She wasn't a dangerous curse anymore. She was someone who could help them, someone with amazing abilities that could benefit everyone. But Casey still had concerns. What happens when others find out what she can do? Casey asked Jake when they were alone. Crysthery with her abilities would be worth millions to the wrong people. Jake hadn't thought about that, but Casey was right. If word got out that Luna could improve ship engines, predict safe routes through space, and help with medical treatment, every slaver and criminal in the galaxy would want to capture her. We'll be careful, Jake said. We won't tell anyone about her abilities. It might be too late for that, Casey said. The slave dealer who sold her to you, he might have kept records. If he finds out what she can really do. That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what Casey had said. Luna was safe for now, but what about tomorrow? What about next week? He got up and walked to Luna's room. The door was open, and she was sitting by the small window, looking out at the stars. Can't sleep either? Jake asked. Luna turned to look at him. I keep feeling your worry, she said. And Casey's fear. She's right to be afraid. There are people who would do terrible things to get someone like me. Then we'll make sure they never find you. Jake said. Luna smiled, but it was sad. You can't protect me forever, Jake. Someday, they'll come looking. Then we'll be ready for them, Jake said. Luna looked back out at the stars. I hope you're right, she said softly. I hope you're right. 3 weeks after leaving Kepler Station, Jake's worst fears came true. The trouble started when they stopped at Meridian Port for fuel and supplies. It was a small trading post, the kind of place where people minded their own business and didn't ask too many questions. Jake was checking the ship's fuel systems when Casey came running up the loading ramp. We have a problem, she said, breathing hard. There are people asking questions about us in the station bars, specifically about whether we have a crysthery on board. Jake felt his blood turn cold. What kind of people? The kind with expensive weapons and no consciences, Casey said. Word is out, Jake. Someone knows what Luna can do. Jake called an emergency crew meeting. Luna sat quietly in the corner while the others discussed their options. We could drop her off here, Pete suggested. Find someone to take care of her. No, Jake said firmly. We're not abandoning her. Then we need to run, Amy said. Get out of here before whoever is looking for us arrives. Too late for that, Ben said, looking at his scanner. I'm picking up 3 ships approaching fast. Military-grade engines and weapons. Jake looked at Luna. Her silver eyes were wide with fear, but she wasn't panicking. I'm sorry, she said quietly. This is my fault. I should have stayed on that auction block. Don't say that, Jake said. This isn't your fault. The ship's communication system crackled to life. A cold female voice filled the bridge. Cargo ship Horizon's Edge. This is Commander Vega Stone of the merchant vessel Dark Star. Prepare to be boarded for inspection. Casey cursed under her breath. Vega Stone? I should have known. You know her? Jake asked. She used to be military. Casey said. Got kicked out for selling weapons to pirates. Now she works for whoever pays the most. If she's here, someone really wants Luna back. The voice came over the con again. You have 60 seconds to drop your shields and prepare for boarding. If you refuse, we will disable your ship and take what we want anyway. Jake looked around at his crew. They were scared, but they were also angry. Luna had become one of them, and no one messed with their family. What do you want to do, Captain? Casey asked. Jake smiled grimly. We run. Amy was already at the navigation controls. Where to? The Nebula of Sorrows, Jake said. If we can get there, we might be able. To lose them in the gas clouds. That's suicide, Pete said. The gravitational fields in that nebula crush ships. Not if we have the right navigator, Jake said, looking at Luna. Luna stood up. I can guide us through, she said. But it will be dangerous for all of us. More dangerous than letting them catch us? Jake asked. Luna shook her head. No, nothing is more dangerous than that. The Horizon's Edge lifted off from Meridian Port with 3 larger ships chasing behind them. Jake pushed the engines as hard as they would go, but their pursuers were gaining ground. They're faster than us, Amy reported. They'll catch us in 20 minutes. Not if we take a shortcut, Luna said. She moved to the navigation console and began working with Amy. There's a gravity well near the 4th planet. If we slingshot around it just right, we can gain speed and change direction at the same time. That's impossible, Amy said. The calculations would take hours. I can feel the gravitational currents, Luna said. Trust me. Amy looked at Jake. He nodded. Do it. They dove toward the planet, using its gravity to whip them around in a tight curve. The pursuing ships tried to follow, but they weren't ready for the maneuver. One of them got caught in the planet's atmosphere and had to pull back. The other 2 fell behind, but kept chasing. Nice flying, Casey said. But they're still following. U.S. The nebula is just ahead, Jake said. Luna, are you ready? Luna had moved to the center of the bridge. The crystal growths on her spine were glowing brightly, and her eyes had turned completely silver. She looked like she was in a trance. I can see the safe paths, she said, her voice sounding different, more distant. But you have to trust me completely. Don't question my directions, no matter how strange they seem. They entered the Nebula of Sorrows. Immediately, the ship began to shake as gravitational forces pulled at them from different directions. The view screen showed swirling clouds of gas and dust, lit by the strange light of dying stars. Left 15 degrees, Luna said calmly. Amy followed her directions, even though her instruments said they were flying straight into a gravity well that should have crushed them. Instead, they slipped through a narrow corridor of stable space. Now right 30 degrees and dive. Again, Amy obeyed, and again they found safety where the instruments said there should be death. Behind them, their pursuers were having trouble. The larger ships couldn't make the quick turns Luna was guiding them through. One ship got caught in a gravity field and was pulled apart. The other was still following, but falling further behind. "There's something else," Luna said suddenly. Her voice was worried. "I can feel other minds in the nebula. Other Crysteri." "What?" Jake said. "There are others like you here?" "Yes," Luna said. "They're prisoners, being held on a station hidden in the nebula. They're in pain, Jake. Someone is hurting them." Jake made another decision that would change everything. "Can you guide us to them?" "Jake, no," Casey said. "We need to get out of here, not go deeper in." "There are people suffering," Jake said. "We can't just leave them." Luna was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "I can find them. But it's very dangerous. The station is surrounded by the worst gravity fields in the nebula." "Do it," Jake said. They flew deeper into the nebula, following Luna's guidance through impossible passages between crushing gravity wells. The remaining pursuing ship tried to follow, but finally gave up and turned back. After an hour of careful flying, they found it. The station was huge, built into a large asteroid that floated in a calm area surrounded by deadly gravity storms. It was the perfect hiding place for illegal operations. "How many Crysteri are on that station?" Jake asked. Luna closed her eyes and concentrated. 12, she said. "No, 13. They're being kept in cages, and someone is doing experiments on them." The crew looked sick. Even Casey, who had been against rescuing Luna at first, looked angry. "We can't fight that station," Pete said. "Look at the size of it. They probably have hundreds of guards." "We don't need to fight them," Jake said. "We just need to get those prisoners out." "How?" Amy asked. Jake looked at Luna. "Can you disable their systems like you did to ours when you first came aboard?" Luna thought about it. "Maybe, if I can get close enough to their computer core. But I'd have to be inside the station." "Then that's what we'll do," Jake said. "Luna and I will go in. The rest of you will wait here and be ready to run when we come back." "I'm going with you," Casey said. "So am I," Ben added. "If those prisoners are hurt, they'll need medical help." Pete nodded. "Count me in too." Amy looked scared but determined. "I'll stay with the ship and keep the engines ready." They spent the next few hours planning. The station had docking bays for small ships, probably used by smugglers and slave traders. Jake would fly a small shuttle over and pretend to be a buyer interested in purchasing Crysteri slaves. The plan was simple but dangerous. Once inside, Luna would use her abilities to find the other prisoners while Jake, Casey, and Ben created a distraction. Then Luna would disable the station's systems, and they would all escape in the confusion. "What if something goes wrong?" Amy asked. "Then you fly away and don't look back," Jake said. "Don't try to rescue us. Just get word to the authorities about what's happening here." Amy didn't like that answer, but she nodded. Jake, Luna, Casey, and Ben took the shuttle and flew toward the station. Jake's hands were sweating as he spoke to the station's control tower. "This is Captain Morrison requesting permission to dock," he said. "I'm interested in purchasing some of your special merchandise." "What kind of merchandise?" came the reply. "The kind with blue skin and crystal spines," Jake said. There was a pause, then the voice came back. "Dock at Bay 7. You'll be met by our sales representative." They landed in a large metal bay filled with other small ships. As soon as they stepped out of the shuttle, armed guards surrounded them. The guards were a mix of different alien species, all carrying heavy weapons. A tall human woman approached them. She had short black hair and cold blue eyes. She wore expensive clothes and carried herself like someone used to giving orders. "I'm Director Sarah Walsh," she said. I understand you're interested in our crystalry collection. That's right, Jake said. I've heard they have useful abilities. Very useful, Walsh said with a cruel smile. We've been studying them for months, learning how to enhance their natural talents. Would you like to see our facilities? Jake forced himself to smile back. I'd be very interested. Walsh led them through corridors filled with laboratories and holding cells. Jake saw terrible things that made him want to be sick. Alien beings were being kept in cages like animals. Scientists in white coats were performing experiments that looked more like torture god Luna walked beside him, but he could tell she was barely keeping control. Her crystal growths were glowing so brightly that she had wrapped a cloak around herself to hide them. He could feel waves of anger and sadness coming from her. Here are our crystalry subjects, Walsh said, stopping at a large room filled with metal cages. Inside the cages were 13 beings who looked like Luna, but these crystari were in much worse condition. They were thin and weak, and many had wires attached to their heads. Some weren't even conscious. Luna made a small sound of pain when she saw them. One of the prisoners, a male crystari with golden crystal growths, looked up and saw her. His eyes went wide. Luna, he said weakly, is that really you? Walsh spun around to look at Luna, who had thrown back her hood. Wait a minute, Walsh said. You're not a buyer. You're one of them. Everything happened at once. Walsh reached for her weapon, but Casey was faster. She knocked Walsh down with a punch to the face. Ben pulled out a medical scanner and began checking the prisoners. Jake started breaking open cage locks, but alarms were sounding throughout the station, and guards were running toward them. Luna, Jake shouted, can you disable their systems? Luna closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. Jake could feel her power flowing through the station like electricity. Lights began to flicker, computers crashed, and the door locks stopped working, but there were too many guards, and more were coming. Jake and his crew were outnumbered 50-1. That's when the rescued crystari joined the fight. Even weak and hurt, they still had their abilities. Working together, they created a wave of psychic energy that knocked out half the guards and sent the others running in confusion. We need to get to the shuttle, Casey shouted, but more guards were blocking their path to the docking bay. They were trapped in the laboratory with nowhere to run. Luna looked at the other crystari. They looked back at her. Without speaking, they all nodded. Everyone hold on to each other, Luna said. And whatever happens, don't let go. Jake grabbed Luna's hand. Casey grabbed Jake's arm. Ben took hold of Casey's shoulder. The other crystari formed a circle around them, their crystal growths all glowing with bright light. What are you doing? Jake asked. Something my people haven't done in 100 years, Luna said. We're going to teleport. The room filled with brilliant light. Jake felt like he was being stretched and twisted through space. Everything went white, and he couldn't tell which way was up or down dot. Then suddenly, they were standing in the shuttle bay next to their ship. Amy was there, her mouth open in shock. How did you ... She started to say. No time to explain, Jake said. Everyone on board, now. They helped the rescued crystari onto the shuttle and flew back to the horizon's edge as fast as they could. Behind them, the station was in chaos. Lights were flashing, and Jake could see small ships launching in all directions. Get us out of here, Amy, Jake said as soon as they were on board. Amy didn't need to be told twice. She fired up the engines and guided them back into the dangerous passages of the nebula. This time, all 13 rescued crystari helped navigate, their combined abilities making the journey much safer. Hours later, when they were finally clear of the nebula and safe in normal space, Jake sat down with Luna and the other survivors. Many of them were too weak to talk, but their leader, The golden crystal Christare, who had recognized Luna, was able to tell their story. "My name is Kian," he said. "I was Luna's teacher when she was young, before our world was destroyed." Jake looked between Luna and Kian. "You know each other?" "I taught her to use her abilities," Kian said. "But that was long ago. I thought she was dead." "I thought you were all dead," Luna said, tears in her silver eyes. Kian explained that the station was run by a criminal organization that captured Christari and tried to use their abilities for illegal purposes. They had been planning to create an army of mind-controlled Christari slaves. "But now their operation is destroyed," Kian said, "thanks to all of you." Jake felt good about what they had accomplished, but he knew their troubles weren't over. The criminals who ran that station were part of a larger organization, and they wouldn't give up easily. "What happens now?" Casey asked. Jake looked around at his crew and their new passengers. 13 more. Christari meant 13 more people who needed protection from those who would use them. "Now we find somewhere safe for everyone," Jake said. "And then we figure out how to stop the people who did this from doing it again." Luna squeezed his hand. "Thank you," she said, "for saving them, for saving all of us." Jake squeezed back. "We're just getting started," he said. 6 months had passed since the rescue at the hidden station. The Horizon's Edge had become more than just a cargo ship. It was now the center of a growing movement to end slavery in the outer systems. Stood on the bridge, looking out at the small fleet of ships that had joined them. Other independent captains had heard about their fight against the slavers and wanted to help. Some were traders like Jake, who were tired of turning a blind eye to suffering. Others were former slaves who had gained their freedom and wanted to help others do the same. Luna came up beside him. She looked different now than she had 6 months ago. She was healthy and strong, and her silver eyes held confidence instead of fear. The other rescued Christari had recovered too, and they all worked together to help guide the growing fleet through dangerous space. "The reconnaissance team is back," Luna said. "They found another slaver operation on Titan base." Jake nodded. Over the past months, they had shut down 7 different slave markets and freed hundreds of prisoners. Each operation taught them more about how the slave trade worked and who was behind it. "How many guards?" Jake asked. "About 40, Luna said. "But Jake, there's something else. Vega Stone is there." Jake turned to look at her. "Commander Vega." Stone, the woman who had chased them into the nebula, had become their main enemy. Every time they hit a slaver operation, she seemed to show up with more ships and better weapons. "She's not giving up," Jake said. "Neither are we," Luna replied. They called a meeting of all the ship captains in the fleet. There were 12 ships now, with crews from dozens of different worlds. They met in the cargo bay of the Horizon's Edge, the largest space available. Captain Maria Santos spoke first. She was a former military officer who had joined them after seeing what the slavers did to children. "Titan base is heavily defended," she said. "We'll need all our ships to take it." "What about the prisoners?" asked Captain Tom Baker, whose own sister had been sold into slavery years ago. "How do we keep them safe during the fighting?" Luna stepped forward. "The other Christari and I have been working on something new," she said. "We think we can disable their weapons and shields without destroying the base." Kian, Luna's old teacher, nodded. "Working together, we can create a psychic pulse that will shut down their electronics. But it will take all of us, and we'll be defenseless while we do it. Then we'll protect you," Jake said. "Whatever it takes." The attack on Titan base began at dawn. Jake's fleet approached from 3 different directions, trying to divide the defenders' attention. But Vega Stone was ready for them. Incoming missiles. Casey called from the navigation station. The space around Titan base erupted in weapons fire. Vega Stone had hidden ships in the asteroid field around the base, and now they came pouring. Out to attack. All Christery to the meditation chamber, Jake ordered. Luna and the other 12 Christery went to a special room they had built in the center of the ship. It was lined with crystal formations that helped focus their abilities. As they began to concentrate, the crystal growths on their spines started to glow. Outside, the battle was fierce. Jake's ships were outnumbered, but they had something the slavers didn't. They were fighting for something they believed in. Amy guided the Horizon's Edge through the battle, dodging missiles and energy beams. Pete kept the engines running at maximum power. Ben treated wounded crew members who were brought to the medical bay. How much longer do the Christery need? Casey asked. Just a few more minutes, Jake said. But a few minutes seemed like forever. 2 of their allied ships had been badly damaged, and Vega Stone's flagship was moving in for the kill. Then Luna's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Everyone hold on," she said. "This is going to feel strange." A wave of energy flowed out from the Horizon's Edge. It was invisible, but Jake could feel it passing through his body like warm water. The wave spread across the battlefield, touching every ship. Immediately, the slaver ships began to shut down. Their weapons stopped firing, their shields collapsed, and their engines went dead. Even Vega Stone's powerful flagship was drifting helplessly in space. "Now," Jake ordered, "take the base." Jake's ships moved in quickly. They docked with Titan Base and sent in boarding parties. The slavers couldn't fight back because all their equipment was dead. Jake led one of the boarding teams. They found the prison levels deep inside the base, where hundreds of beings from dozens of different species were being held in terrible conditions. But they also found something else. In the base commander's office, they discovered computer files that showed the true size of the slave trade. It wasn't just a few criminal groups working alone. It was a massive organization that reached into every part of the galaxy, including some of the most powerful governments. "This is bigger than we thought," Casey said, looking at the data. Jake nodded grimly. "A lot bigger." They were loading the freed prisoners onto their ships when Vega Stone's voice came over the radio. "This isn't over, Morrison," she said. Her ship's systems were starting to come back online. "You can't stop all of us. There are too many of us, and we have too much power." "Maybe," Jake said into his radio, "but we're going to try." As they flew away from Titan Base, Jake looked around at all the freed prisoners. There were humans, aliens of species he had never seen before, and even a few more CRY came to stand beside him. "What do we do now?" she asked. Jake thought about that question. They had freed hundreds of slaves and shut down several operations, but Vega Stone was right. The slave trade was huge, with connections to powerful people throughout the galaxy. "We need allies," Jake said finally. "People with real power who can help us fight this thing legally." "The Galactic Federation?" Luna asked. "Some of them are probably involved in the slave trade," Jake said. "But not all of them. There have to be some honest politicians and military officers who would help us if they knew the truth." Over the next several weeks, Jake's fleet began a new kind of mission. Instead of just attacking slaver operations, they started gathering evidence. They recorded everything they found, documented every crime, and collected testimony from freed slaves. Luna and the other Christery were especially helpful with this. Their ability to sense emotions meant they could tell when someone was lying or telling the truth. They helped identify which Federation officials might be honest, and which ones were probably working with the slavers. Finally, they had enough evidence to take their case public. Jake sent copies of everything they had found to news organizations, honest politicians, and military commanders throughout the galaxy. The response was immediate and powerful. Federation worlds that had been ignoring the slave trade suddenly couldn't pretend it didn't exist. Military units that had been ordered to look the other way were given new orders to hunt down slavers. Most importantly, other people began to join the fight. Independent traders, planetary governments, and even some military units started working together to end slavery in their regions. Jake was in his quarters, reading reports from allies throughout the galaxy, when Luna knocked on his door. "Come in," he said. Luna entered and sat down across from his desk. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "For what?" "For everything," Luna said. "For buying me when no one else would. For taking off my chains. For helping me find my people. For fighting this war that you didn't have to fight." Jake shook his head. "I did have to fight it," he said. "The moment I saw you on that auction stage, I had to fight it." Luna smiled. Why? Jake thought about that question. It was the same question Luna had asked him 6 months ago, and he still wasn't sure he had a good answer. "Because everyone deserves to be free," he said finally. "Because no one should be bought and sold like property. Because it was the right thing to do. Even when it was dangerous, even when it cost you money and put your crew at risk. Especially then," Jake said. Luna nodded. "That's what makes humans special," she said. "Other species in the galaxy are smart or strong or have amazing abilities. But humans are the only ones who will fight for strangers, who will risk everything for people they don't even know, just because it's right." The next morning, Jake got a message that changed everything. It was from Admiral Lisa Cross of the Federation Navy, one of the officials they had sent evidence to. "Captain Morrison," the message said, "the Federation Council has voted to create a special task force to end slavery in Federation space. They want you to lead it. You'll have ships, resources, and legal authority to shut down any slaver operation you find. Are you interested?" Jake called his crew together to discuss the offer. They met in the common room where they had played cards just 6 months ago, when Luna was still a frightened slave hiding in a storage room. "What do you think?" Jake asked them. "It means we could do more good," Casey said. "With Federation backing, we could really make a difference. It also means more danger," Pete pointed out. "The slavers will fight harder if they know the Federation is officially against them." "They're already fighting as hard as they can," Amy said. "At least this way we'd have backup." Ben nodded. "I'm in. We've seen what slavery does to people. If we can stop it, we have to try." Jake looked at Luna. "What about you? This war started because of you. If you want to stop fighting and find a peaceful place to live with your people, I'll understand." Luna shook her head. "There are still Christari out there in chains," she said. "There are still children being sold in slave markets. I can't rest while that's happening." Jake smiled. "Then I guess we have our answer." He sent a message back to Admiral Cross accepting the offer. Within a week, their small fleet had become the core of the Federation Anti-Slavery Task Force. The war against the slavers continued, but now they were winning. With Federation support, they shut down major operations throughout the galaxy. Vega, Stone, and many other slaver commanders were captured and put on trial. Jake stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, now officially designated as the task force flagship. Through the view screen, he could see a dozen Federation warships flying in formation with them. Luna came up beside him, as she had so many times before. But now she wore the uniform of a Federation special advisor, and the crystal growths on her spine were decorated with medals for bravery. "New mission orders just came in," she said, handing him a datapad. "There's a slave market on Outer Rim Station. They're selling children." Jake took the orders and nodded. "Then we'd better stop them." As the task force changed course toward their new mission, Jake thought about how much had changed since that day on Kepler Station. One impulsive decision to help a stranger had led to a galaxy-wide movement for freedom. "Any regrets?" Luna asked, seeming to read his thoughts. Jake looked around at his crew, his ships, and all the people they had saved. "Only one," he said. "What's that?" "That it took me so long to get started." Luna laughed, a sound like crystal bells ringing. "Well," she said, "we're making up for lost time now." The Horizon's Edge and its escort ships jumped to hyperspace, carrying their crews toward another battle in the war for freedom. Behind them, they left star systems where slavery was now illegal and slaves were free. Ahead of them waited more fights, more rescues, and more chances to prove that sometimes doing the right thing could change the entire galaxy. In the end, Jake thought that was what being human really meant, seeing suffering and choosing to fight it, no matter the cost. It was a lesson that had started with one frightened Christery girl in chains, and it was a lesson that would change the galaxy forever.